So all the things that we listed, enumerated, that the Protestant church seems to have lost or minimized or made a reductionistic replacement for, what I think was really the emergence of that movement was actually like you just said, and well, you didn't say it this way, but you just said this heightened emphasis on the importance of the individual, right? We lost a lot of the communal thing in doing so. And so I think what needs to happen is a reunifying of the importance of the communal and the corporate aspect of the body, right? But also not to the neglect of the fact that these individual parts have their place. And sometimes when, let's say, if I hurt my toe, I'm going to give it preferential attention. That's what you do to the hurt pieces of a body. You give it preferential attention, and you try to use the tools that are present in the rest of the body to heal. The energy is focused on healing that hurt part, right? And so it's like we've gone to extremes in many different ways. Let's say perhaps there was this lapse of importance of the individual, and it became too corporatized, which is, I think, what's happening in larger, more conglomerate mega churches. You get lost. You cease being an individual, but you don't become part of a body. And that's why people just show up and disappear, right? And I think that kind of puts a guard up between you and actually participating in that way. But it seems like the importance of the individual emerged out of that. That certainly can be seen as a positive, as a plus. So I think that's probably, the mainstay benefit, let's say, of what's come out of the Protestant and the fragmentation is this emphasis on the individual. But I think without losing that emphasis, how do we get back to the communal thing? And I think often we're not looking in the right direction because we try to focus on doctrinal agreement or disagreement rather than focusing on what it is that was removed or truncated in order to reach that emphasis of the individual. What if we started re-emphasizing, let's say, the prominent place of the Eucharist in the church? What if we started re-emphasizing the need for beauty in sacred spaces? What if we started re-emphasizing the fact that beauty and our interaction within it reminds us, and our vessel, our body and our mind, both get to remember that our proper place is in a garden, but a walled garden. It's society and nature all at the same time. What if that's the right place to inhabit, right? This reminds me of another picture that I found in my scouring of the internet to try to find beautiful things that were striking to me. One of them was a house that had become dilapidated, began to fall apart and fragment, and yet in it is markings of life, growth, and what I would say is strikingly beautiful, but almost in a haunting sort of way, right? Sometimes life is like that. Sometimes beauty's like that. And still, I'm drawn in. I look at this picture and I see that there was design. There was markings on the wall. There's the ornate banister for the stairway. The stairs themselves are floating in the middle of the air. There's no structural beam supports from under them. They're very well crafted. And yet, this place is abandoned and falling apart. It's an empty shell. But something's taken up residence there. And it's like this growing, self-breeding thing, right? It's like, is this what, perhaps this is a picture, the reason why it's striking to me is this is a picture of perhaps where we are. New growth is starting to come out. The beauty is there, but it's old and worn, and we don't know what to do with it, right? We're afraid to rebuild. We're afraid to undergo making something beautiful again, right? And so we leave it. It becomes dilapidated. We don't know what to add to it, you know? And so it's like, what do we do now? Like, what's the, like this, I think this is a part of the conversation. We're at an hour and 40 minutes, let's say. Let's go to the what now. Like, what do we do about this, guys?
So, Josh, I'm about to drop a preacher bomb on everybody here. Y'all
do
ready?
it.
We got to die. We got to die. You know what that image was? It was death and resurrection. Something died so that a new life could be born out of it. and we're going to have to die to ourselves. We're going to have to die to this need for doctrinal unity to the most granular level. It's like, if you're not pre-mill, then get out of my church. And it's like, wait. Well, that's not an essential of the faith, right? We're going to have to die to that arrogance of, you have to believe every single thing the way I believe it. We're going to have to die to the idea that people are just going to come to our church because it's culturally what they're supposed to do, and we're going to have to start being reborn as we go out, into the world. There's all sorts of things we're going to have to die to. We're going to have to die to a lot of old ways, and we're going to have to die to our sin. God is going to fight for us when our camp is purified. I've preached on this before, and it's powerful to me. Achan's sin, right? The reason God didn't give them victory the first time they went after Ai was because there was sin in the camp. And until they dealt with it, they couldn't defeat Ai, right? The church is the same way. We are constantly talking about the world's sin when we haven't even purified our own sin. We're constantly pointing the finger at the ungodly out there when we don't even point the finger at ourselves and say, what are my pet sins that I've been feeding over this past week? And I'm preaching to myself first and foremost. I'm very guilty of this, right? It's a lot easier to say, look at how sinful the world is. But what we need to do is say, how sinful is the church, right? So we have to die in order to be reborn. And the reason you saw that image there as both beautiful and also haunting is the same reason we see Good Friday as both beautiful and haunting. It's one of the most beautiful worship services of the entire year, and yet Christ dies in that worship service, and it haunts us to the bone. And yet we say there's beauty in his death, there's beauty in his blood, there's beauty in his sacrifice. And the reason is because we know the end of the story, that he rises from the dead. So that's my answer. We got to die in order that we might rise again.